St. Patrick, the Apostle of Ireland, and Missionary of Hope. St. Patrick is one of the most well-known and celebrated saints in Christianity, especially within the Celtic tradition. His figure transcends the boundaries of faith to become a national symbol of Ireland, where he is revered as the apostle who brought the gospel to the green lands of the island. His feast day, commemorated on March 17th, is celebrated not only for religious reasons, but also cultural ones, involving millions of people around the world. Behind the legends and traditions surrounding the name of St. Patrick, there lies a real, moving, and deeply inspiring story. From slave to bishop, from foreigner to spiritual father of a people, St. Patrick stands as an example of perseverance, unshakable faith, and missionary love. In this video, you will discover the life, challenges, miracles, and spiritual legacy left by this great man of God. The origins of Patrick. St. Patrick was born around the year 385 AD, most likely in Roman Britain, present-day England, Wales, or Scotland. His baptismal name was Mawin Succat, and he came from a Christian family of relative nobility. His father, Calpurnius, was a deacon, and his grandfather, Potitus, was a presbyter. Despite this religious background, Patrick spent his childhood far from a life of true faith. He himself later confessed in his own words, "In my youth, I did not know the true God." This spiritual distance would change drastically when, at the age of 16, Patrick was kidnapped by Irish pirates and taken as a slave to Ireland, an event that would profoundly mark his life and future mission, slavery and conversion. For about 6 years, Patrick lived as a slave, working as a shepherd in the remote mountains of Ireland. Isolated, alone, and in constant suffering, he began to seek God with fervor. In his writings, he recounts that he prayed constantly, sometimes up to 100 times during the day and as many at night. This period of slavery was, paradoxically, the fertile soil in which his deep conversion and missionary calling took root. He states, "It was there that the Lord opened my heart to the understanding that, even in my sin, I must turn to him with all my being." Patrick went from being an indifferent youth to becoming a man of prayer, growing spiritually in the school of suffering, escape, and God's call. After 6 years in captivity, Patrick had a prophetic dream in which a voice told him that a ship was waiting to take him back to his homeland. He escaped, walking long distances until he found the ship and returned to Britain. Back at his parents' home, he had another decisive dream, the famous Call of the Irish, in which he heard the voices of the people of Ireland crying out, "We beg you, holy boy, come and walk again among us." This vision deeply marked him. Patrick understood that God was calling him to return to the land of his former masters, not to seek revenge, but to proclaim the gospel, preparation and ordination. Determined to serve God, Patrick entered ecclesiastical studies. He studied for many years, was ordained a priest, and later consecrated a bishop. He then received the official mission of the church to become a missionary among the pagan Celts of Ireland, a land still largely untouched by Christianity. It was an extremely difficult mission. Ireland was deeply marked by strong Druidic paganism, mystical rituals, and resistance to outside influence. But Patrick knew that people and their culture well. Instead of imposing, he sought to dialogue, adapt, understand, and proclaim the good news with love and courage. The mission in Ireland. Around 432 AD, Patrick set foot again in Ireland, not as a slave, but as an apostle. He began to preach the gospel with simple words, concrete actions, and demonstrations of divine power. From then on, accounts of miracles attributed to him began to spread. The casting out of evil spirits and healings, the conversion of kings and tribal chiefs, survival of attempts on his life, the use of elements of nature to evangelize, such as the three-leaf shamrock, to explain the Holy Trinity. Patrick's missionary strategy was remarkable. He sought to convert tribal leaders, which made it easier for their people to follow. At the same time, he invested in forming local clergy, ordaining priests and building churches throughout the island. Patrick was not the first Christian to arrive in Ireland, but he was the most effective and influential, earning recognition as the Apostle of Ireland. Teachings and writings. St. Patrick left us two main documents: Confessio, Confession, an autobiographical and spiritual account, where he describes his life, vocation, and mission. Written with humility, it reveals his deep faith, gratitude to God, and trust in his mercy, even amid persecutions. "It was not I who chose Ireland, it was the love of God that brought me there." Letter to the soldiers of Coroticus, a denunciation of the atrocities committed by a British leader who attacked Irish Christians. Patrick firmly defended the newly converted and condemned slavery and murder. These writings show not only a man of faith, but also one with a strong sense of justice and moral courage. Challenges and persecutions. Despite his missionary success, Patrick faced strong opposition from the Druids, who saw his message as a threat to their religious authority, from local leaders who resisted Christian morality, even within the church, where he was unjustly accused by some British clergy who envied his success. But Patrick never gave up. He knew his mission was divine. He endured slander, was briefly imprisoned, suffered persecution, but always pressed forward with his heart fixed on Christ. Miracles and legends. The figure of St. Patrick quickly became surrounded by legends, some symbolic, others perhaps based on real events. Among the most famous, he banished all snakes from Ireland, traditionally understood as a symbol of the expulsion of paganism and the forces of evil. He used the shamrock to explain the Trinity, which became a national symbol. He converted thousands with a single sermon. Though not all of these can be historically proven, they reflect the deep impact Patrick had on the spiritual memory of Ireland. Death and legacy. St. Patrick died around 461 AD, after about 30 years of mission. It is believed that he was buried in Downpatrick, in present-day Northern Ireland. After his death, Christianity spread throughout Ireland with astonishing speed. Monasteries were founded, missionaries were sent to other lands, including to evangelize parts of Europe, and Ireland became a center of Christian culture and spirituality during the Middle Ages. The celebration of St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, the date of his death, became a national holiday in Ireland and is celebrated in many countries, especially where Irish communities are present. Over time, the feast also took on a cultural and festive character. Parades, Celtic music, green attire, and the shamrock symbol. Churches hold special masses in his memory. Many, including non-Catholics, celebrate life, friendship, and joy on this day. Although today the date has secular aspects, the true meaning remains. Celebrating the man who brought Christ to an entire people with courage and love. St. Patrick today, more than just a cultural icon. St. Patrick is a model missionary. He shows that God transforms pain into mission, from slave to apostle. He taught that prayer is the strength to resist and remain steadfast. He demonstrated that forgiveness and love overcome hatred and slavery. His life inspires us to bring the light of the gospel to those who still live in the distant lands of the human heart, and to trust that God writes straight, even through the crooked lines of our history. Conclusion: St. Patrick was much more than the saint of legends. He was a real man, of flesh and blood, with fears, weaknesses, and limitations, yet with unshakable faith. He left the world an example of mission, humility, and absolute trust in God. His story reminds us that no one is ever too far to be called by God, that the darkest moments may be the beginning of our true conversion, and that the mission of evangelization continues today. In every baptized soul, in every word of hope, in every act of love. St. Patrick, pray for us. If you were inspired by this story, be sure to share this video with someone who needs to know St. Patrick. Activate the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, and leave your like. We will meet again in the next video with more inspiring stories like this one.